In this episode, Ryan and I discuss the importance of having an agent who can and will advocate for you during the application process. And of course, we discussed much more that you'll enjoy, I'm sure. We had fun. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Banking with Lot podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery.
And I'm your co-host, Ryan Griggs.
So after 45 minutes of sitting around jawing on what we're going to talk about, we were ready to go.
We prepped. That's our podcast's prep time.
Right. And so we just, hey, Mr. Griggs, what do you want to talk about? Oh, I don't know, James. What do you want to talk about?
The comments are fun to start with.
Okay.
So fun. I'll read it and then you can respond fresh. Jonathan comments on YouTube. Just first names. We keep it anonymous, Jonathan comments, none of these videos give you a hard breakdown like on a whiteboard, how it all works. All the talk is just generalizations. That's what makes it seem like a gimmick. What I enjoy is that there's no whiteboard on this comment and it sounds pretty general.
Yeah, seems like a gimmick to me, like a drive-by comment.
Yeah. Look, this is different. There's plenty of that out there. If you want to go see the people who do the Excel things and, they have conjured their own algorithms and they put it on a whiteboard to make it look real official.
Right.
This is, we speak English. It's, we're not perfect with grammar and all that, but
I'm not, you are.
Thank you. Gets pretty close. And, Nelson spoke in very simple language. Becoming Your Own Banker is written for the layperson. He gave talks to the public. Becoming Your Own Banker was the result of his in public seminars, right? Compiling that material and then binding it together as a book. So there's a tradition in this movement of just speaking in plain English. And I'm accused all the time of getting too technical. And if you want the numbers, I don't know if you're aware of the Medium blog, but I have a blog where there's plenty of numerical examples and little equations and things. We try not to overcomplicate it. So many people overcomplicate it to make it seem better than it is, to sound mystical in order to make you feel unintelligent so that you have to trust them in order to get the product in force and to convince you to say yes. And I'm not interested in that. But if you are, there's plenty of it out there. You can have the fast food. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I've done my share of whiteboards and third-party software and still use third-party software in a limited role. I think I know that I've released a lot of presentations that were given live. I might have incorporated a whiteboard in a different way had I known or thought that those videos would be released to the general public, But as I have said and continue to say, if you're going to make your decision off of numbers on a page, you're probably not going to make a good decision. And then if you want to get worse than that, if you're going to make your decision based on a bunch of lines, squiggly lines on a whiteboard, your decision's probably going to be worse. Yeah. And I have come to believe over the last several years that, and rightly so, they're everlasting principles in my opinion. In my philosophy that, you speak the truth. The people that are looking for the truth resonate with the truth. If you want to speak gimmicks and I have to present myself as holier than thou or smarter than you, dumb it down for you. And you just want sound bites and you're going to make legitimate decisions based on sound bites. It's not going to go well for you, but you, Jonathan, I could see from your comments, it's crystal clear that you're attracted to the gimmick stuff. So please walk on by. Okay. And leave a good comment that we can, have fun with and share with the listeners that are seeking the truth.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
I've had to come to learn and accept over the years in this. By the way, so we're here in late September 2021. Next month, obviously, is October. That'll be 4 years. for me. So coming up on a annual anniversary in the business.
Really?
Yeah. I started with you in
I'm
October.
so proud of you. 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. So
and knocking it out of the park in 4 years.
Thank you. And over that period of time, I've had to learn that you can't reach everybody. Sometimes I encounter these certain mindsets that just drive me up a wall. One of them goes, I understand that you talk about IBC with this capital stuff and banking, but I'm really looking at this as just another component of my overall diversified portfolio. And so I don't want a lot of death benefit. Just want to do the cash.
I don't want any death benefit, right?
No death benefit. And that's just, it's like, it's not frustrating anymore. It kind of disappoints me because people miss so much, especially when people who use that language typically have some degree of success and consequently can do more. Like the more you make, the more you can do. Sure. With the more premium you can pay, the more cash value you can build. And it's like, man, you'd miss out. The one I'm thinking of in particular was in real estate. And he had bought foreclosures and done all the things that you would use capital for in real estate. I'm like,
why would I do this?
I know. I'm like, man, if only you could see it. And as we've gone through the process and talked through structure and company selection and all the things that are more important than structure, by the way, we've ended up at a specific design, a certain premium level for him. And he's starting to come around, I think. And see, there are other things too. He's talking about how his father passed away early and he doesn't think he's going to live that long. I mean, the guy's young, early 40s. I'm like, this is getting me depressed.
All he's got to do is hang around with a bunch of other real estate gurus and their real estate clubs, which I'm a member of some. And they'll talk him smooth out of dividend paying whole life insurance, that high commissionable product. And, they've got to disparage your character and, yeah. But
I commend him. He's really come around, and I think he's starting to see the power of it now. His last comment was to me, well, what if we did more premium? I'm like, we're getting somewhere now.
All the numbers on the right side of the page go up. That's what happens.
The numbers go up. That's exactly what happens if I do more. The numbers go up. What happens if I do less? The numbers go down.
What happens if I change my mind? It depends on the structure of the policy. Let's see. It's like I say it all the time, over and over and over. And talking about client conversations, we have several every day, every day, day in, day out, and they're beautiful. Talk to an individual because it speaks exactly to this and even to the comment. The gentleman is, I think, first generation American, citizen, productive, family oriented, successful. And he contacts our office. And from the beginning, he's like, listen, I have engaged with 3 and 4 different organizations. Every one of them say something different. And it's always about the structure. The focus is on the structure, which is wrong. He says that one entity or one group says that 90-10 is best for me. And he asks them why, and they can't explain why or why not. He said the next group says that 80-20 is best for me. But when I ask them why, they can't explain why or why not. The same with 70-30 and 60-40. And we're just like, okay, are you ready to do it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm all in. So we go through our process. And he's probably going to become a client. I mean, I don't know what people do and why they do it. But if he doesn't become a client, you know why he won't become a client? Is because he drug his wife through that whole process with all of the other organizations that are saying everything is completely different. You talk to them here, there, and yon. They're all different, and they can't explain why or why not. And I mean, he shared with us too. He's like, James, no one has ever asked the questions that y'all ask. No one, the detailed personal questions to understand me and what I'm trying to do and what I want to do.
Oh, wow.
They all just say, tell me what you want to pay, and then we'll send you an illustration, and this is best for you. And so his wife, and this is why I love.
It's not even advising. You're not an advisor. That's not even.
No, that's not even proper order taking. It's not. It's like throwing whatever on the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
That's what that is. Anyway, his wife, after going through all that, and God bless her, she's like, no, they're all shysters.
Yeah, I get it.
And they're all the same, right? And that too exists for the newly exposed to the idea of the infinite banking concept, that we're all the same, and we're not. So
I think a big part of it, because I think people experience this, they watch these other podcasts, they eventually end up here. And I think it can happen, like the question can arise, why is it the case that there's all these various opinions, and there seems to be, and I'll put it right out there, there seems to be like tension in the industry.
Oh, there is.
And everybody likes to pretend it's not, and it's all like fairy dust and little ponies and unicorns and everything's all happy and we're all in it together. It's like, no, we're not.
It's like, show me your papers.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to a podcast, Jordan Peterson, who Nelson liked, a major psychologist. He was interviewing the author of a book called The Boy Crisis. It was talking about the crisis with young men and boys in the country. And he had this quote, and it like struck me right in the face. He said, anger is fear masked.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, wow. I thought of all the times that I've gotten angry before. And I'm like, what am I afraid of? Well, I think the people who get upset, I think a lot of these agents who they're aware of us, and we've said that no structure is right for everybody, and that can seem threatening to these other organizations that have said that one structure, regardless of what it is, 10, 90, 20, 80, 30, 70, 50, 50, 40, these agencies and these organizations that have hung their hat on a specific structure are threatened by the idea, and they're fearful, consequently, because they feel threatened. They're threatened by the idea that there is no one size fits all, one structure for everybody. And so I think that the anger or the consternation that they might feel towards us or towards the ideas that we put out, and which is expressed in these comments, right? And if you've been a consumer or a potential client of one of these agencies, and you adopted even implicitly this mindset that there is one structure, and you sort of identified yourself or aligned yourself with the view that one structure is right, you too will feel threatened and feel afraid when another idea is confidently proposed that no, there is no one size fits all structure for everyone. So what that's coming from is this fear, and the fear is, I think, embedded in ignorance. In my first year in the business, I lived on credit cards. Okay, it was rough. Talking about the 4-year anniversary coming up, it was hard. I decided that IBC was what I was going to do, and I was only going to do that. And there's not many people out there who start that way. There are some who end up there after having some other experience in finance, but for someone who wants to get into IBC, say, I'm going to do that. I have some agents now, and I tell them, do not be misguided. Do not be confused. This will be hard. Like, financial sales is difficult on its own, and then you're going to specialize in something that no one's ever heard of. Okay, it's not going to be easy rowing, right? But I think that for me personally, having gone through that, having kind of been beaten down for an extended period of time, has sort of beaten out of me this fear of going without. And I think that people who are hanging their hat on a certain, it's kind of like a copy paste, drag and drop business strategy. One structure is the best. We're doing that structure we work with the quote unquote best companies with the biggest names. Therefore, you should do business with us. That's a quick and easy drag and drop business marketing strategy. And when there's a other competent, informed, contrasting opinion, I think that makes them fearful because they think that might mean that they would go without.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's responsible for. I think that's the origin of a lot of this tension and a lot of the contrasting views. Maybe that helps people. I don't know.
But, it's like I get angry. And Jana, my lovely wife, has always said that, anger is just an outward expression of inward fear. So the same thing said differently.
That's good. Yeah.
And, we get comments quite often about being triggered, and I like to trigger Mr. Griggs before we turn the mics on sometimes because it is not only entertaining, but it winds up being educational, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think there's a real benefit. I mean, yes, it's fun triggering you, and I do enjoy that.
Thank you. Get my blood pressure up on the weekend.
It's not just, for the sake of triggering, right? I think the outcome of that, because look, we can listen. I try not to listen to financial podcasts, even this one. I don't listen to it very often. And, I rely on the AB Ninja and, my experience and your editing for proper grammar. Mm-hmm. But I get angry. And so if that's applied to me, the anger is an outward expression of inward fear, then what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm concerned about. And I don't like to use the word fear. I don't like to make decisions based in fear. And I'm not going to go without. I've never gone without. God's been better to me than, could even ever believe. And I started years ago without mentorship. And I know how absolutely difficult that is. But my concern is the truth being suppressed. Right. And then, Nelson's legacy being perverted. Mm-hmm. Not that, I'm only one man. I can only do so much, but by God, what I can do, I'll do. Right. And then my concern is for the people that it ultimately hurts.
Yeah.
These terrible structures. Right. So it does make me angry too. The selfish part of that is there's such an educational process. No one's ever heard of this. And you're going to go into the financial services industry trying to help or educate people on an idea, right? A truth, but it's an idea and a concept that is completely opposite of what they've been told. Mm-hmm. And it's really counterintuitive to the way we think about money. And which seems like that's a great opportunity to me, right? And it is. But it's challenging.
Yeah, it should be a good thing. Like it should be a relief if there's a flaw in your preconceived ideas. Because you can fix that.
If you're aware of it.
Yes. Yeah. If you're willing to, open to the idea. But if it's not, if you're perfect in your preconceived ideas and there's still something wrong, well then that's less desirable. You're going to have to live with that, right? When it's better if there is something that you can address in your own thinking, if you're willing to, and if you're willing to become aware of it, because then you can opt out of the whole system that everybody else is engrossed in. Yeah. And what better time? We had a call yesterday with some other professionals, and they kind of have had a similar experience in their business, that with the growing uncertainty and political chaos and the financial volatility and economic volatility, that their business has been going better than ever. And there's a sense in which it's unfortunate that some would benefit when so many are suffering. But at the same time, it's like at least some can benefit. Like it would be worse if everybody had to suffer. It's better that there is a way out, that you can reconsider things. I come back. I really look back. It's so God works in such interesting ways. Like the last IBC think tank that Nelson attended was the first one I presented at, where I laid out for the first time publicly that the difference between capitalizing and investing. And we've talked some about charitable stuff and philanthropy, and it fits
a lot. We've talked about that a lot.
A little bit relative to all that's going to come in the future, but it fits hand in glove with the idea of maximizing capital, retaining control over capital, retaining access to it. And if people would consider it, I mean, you got to go 30,000 feet or higher. You got to go big bird's eye view and be willing to consider that all that this hodgepodge piecemeal conglomeration of things that you've picked up from your high school home econ class or from the brother-in-law who happened to go work for a major financial services firm or your boss at the last company you worked for, all these little, your mother-in-law, all these little pieces that you've conglomerated together, all of that stuff falls within a certain paradigm, right? A certain investing paradigm, a certain assets under management paradigm, right? It all ends up there. For some reason, all these companies want you to give control of your capital to somebody else, right? And to be willing to recognize that is a certain set of ideas that we don't have to challenge them or undermine them or whatever. Just set it aside and be willing to consider that there's another approach to what we even mean when we say financial questions, right? What's the financial goal? I've mentioned it on here before. Like when I first start talking to people, we talk about philosophy. Like, what do we actually want to achieve objectively over someone's lifetime and into the next life? And their conversations with other financial people don't start that way. It's never that. It's never what's the philosophical orientation? What's our purpose? What's our objective? What are we trying to achieve? Which is crazy. You would think that you would start there, but what is the role? I've asked it a lot. Like, what is the role of a financial advisor? And I said I did a long Facebook post the other day. It's like, if you're not discussing capital or the banking function, as Nelson would have said, if that is not the subject of the conversation, you are not having a financial advisory conversation. You could be having a conversation about the sale of a certain kind of financial product. Fine. You want to do that? Go ahead. But that is not a strategic advisory conversation unless it's about control, access to capital, control or access to the banking function. If that's not the question, then we're not talking about financial stuff, right? We're talking about some subcomponent, some particular product that somebody wants to sell. And that is what it is. Fast food's available. You can eat that. But it's not, in my view, and I don't think most financial people ask the question, what is the role of a financial advisor? I think they think that's a job. It's an employment status that some people have in affiliation with some company. And it kind of ends there. I don't think people consider it from the perspective of like a vocation or a profession independent of some particular employment organization or some particular employment arrangement. And so no wonder that this is where we end up. No wonder that we end up with the drag and drop, copy paste kind of mentality. And it does. And so, do people get, no one's perfect. We're not always going to be not angry or not triggered or not frustrated. And I do think there's a difference between anger and frustration. But I do get, if I was on Jason Lowe and Richard Canfield's podcast that'll be coming out here at the end of September in 2021.
Our Canadian friends, Wealth Without Bay Street.
And I got, of course, all fired up because they wanted to talk about an article I wrote about Dave Ramsey. And, but I said on there, it's like, if it's not that, I don't want to be coming out of nowhere and being the big old angry Hulk person. But if you see things a certain way and it leads you to certain inescapable conclusions, you can't help but be frustrated about it because you know what the alternative is. And so if that comes through, well, then It should give you an idea of the magnitude of the difference between what we're doing and what else is out there. And I think that it's okay to be energized by that.
Yeah, I mean, if you energized, if you don't have passion, applied to what you're doing, it's like, how exciting can it be?
You gave an Easter egg last time, and I wanted to bring it up, and you can tell me as much of it as you want to, but you talked about some clients.
It's an Easter egg for a reason.
You talked about some clients that you have, kind of changing subjects here, that had a husband and wife who were going through the process to implement IBC in their own personal lives. And then towards the end of the process, they said, "Oh, James, we forgot to tell you about our nonprofit that we have." And so I think what's exciting that nobody talks about is how IBC can be integrated into a charitable or philanthropic context, and just how available that is.
And there are many.
Yeah. And just how available that is to so many people. Like when you and I first started talking about charitable stuff, I remember the first thing I had used the example of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And you said that, well, my clients aren't Bill and Melinda Gates. And I'm like, yeah. But the underlying suggestion there is like, it takes a lot of money to do that. When in fact, I think we've seen
but that was just one
doesn't.
comment on a conversation. There's
Yeah.
many entities that are tax exempt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's just talk about the church, which is not necessarily what we're talking about. My clients that is a ministry that they have, and that is a church, a 501c3. All right. Which is, everybody's aware of those, right? We all go to church, or we've been to church, or, we're in. But then when you mentioned Dave Ramsey, which I don't really like talking about all these financial entertainers, because they promote the same narrative, that is just, I'm over it. I'm over the narrative that they promote, because it's complete dependency is what they promote. Dependency upon Wall Street and their god-awful products that they create and voice onto the unsuspecting American public. And then they get paid very well to do that. Okay. And then they try to make the churches dependent upon their curriculum. It's just another level of dependency. Just like the agent, how it is difficult, starting out, the agent, even the advisor in the investment world, when you don't have clients and, you're trying to find your way and not starve to death. There's a whole industry that's created for the agent and the advisors to become dependent upon third-party software. Right? When the agent's dependent upon that to convey the power of life insurance, they're dependent. And if something goes wrong there, how are they going to convey the power of life insurance? And then if the agent or advisor is dependent upon it, then the consumer is going to be dependent upon it as well. Real estate investor, let me see your pro forma. Let me compare the pro forma to the life insurance illustration, and I'll compare that to the investment projection. All three are created from a different basis, right? And so I'm just saying that charitable, when it comes to the charitable organizations, mainly the church, you have these third-party financial gurus that are trying to make the church and the congregation dependent upon their curriculum. I'm going to teach you financial independence. Really? By being dependent upon Wall Street and their products? Now, I understand. Look, and maybe they can convey a certain amount of discipline, like you need to spend less than you earn. No kidding. All right. You can learn a lot of fabulous financial concepts right out of the book, the Bible. Okay. And then you're going to encourage the pastor, the preacher, the board, the elders, whatever structure is, you're going to be dependent upon this software so your congregation can get out of debt. Now that sounds altruistic and benevolent, so they can live like no other. So you, preacher, pastor, church, your congregation, if they're out of debt, they'll tithe more. Really? Now, I'm not saying that there's not some good financial concepts that are taught. I'm not saying that. But dollar cost average is not one of them I'm talking about. Okay. Whenever you marry the infinite banking concept with a tax exempt organization, you can change the world. You can change the world. And it's a bottom up change. It's not a change that's given from the top down.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible that we don't already participate in this.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and then I had another conversation with an individual. He's a client, been a client, and it's substantial, you know, as far as, you know, generational and, you know, business, personal. And he's like, this whole idea of mutuality, the whole idea that me, the consumer, the policy owner, is an owner of the company. I mean, think that through. Think that through. So a mutual company is owned by the policyholders. Every company that exists for two primary purposes. Number one is to provide a good or service. And number two is to make a profit. Right. It's like capitalism is the foundation of, in Christianity, I might say, is the foundation of every good thing that has ever happened in man's life. All right. Okay. Now, what's the opposite of that? Oh, you're just selling life insurance. You damn right I'm selling life insurance. I'm buying it too. I get paid commissions, full disclosure on the bottom. You know, yes, you dang right I am. Don't mean to cuss. Okay. What's the opposite of that? I can go buy a stock life insurance company, a life insurance company that issues stock that are owned by the shareholder, that is owned by the shareholders. And they may or may not pay a dividend on that stock. And it may or may not appreciate in value. Probably will with all the hedge funds and private equity groups that are buying life insurance companies. Now, listen, why in the world would a hedge fund or private equity group spend so much? And go look up. There's hundreds, or I don't want to say hundreds. Barry Dykas just put out a good report, gives a bit of a history on the life insurance companies that are purchased by hedge funds and private equity groups. Now, and I understand that the investor in some of those groups don't always make money, but the owners always make money. All right. So do you think that that's like no value in a life insurance company? Why are they buying
Why would they want them? Yeah.
Yeah, why would they want them? And then why would they want to buy a company to demutualize it? All right, so they can repurpose it, the life insurance company, and all of its products. Okay, I digress. So I could go onto the market and buy a stock from of a publicly traded life insurance company, and then I can go buy their policies. Right, so I own the policy, I get the coverage, and then if the stock value goes up, I get that appreciation and the dividend. Right? Okay, I mean I can do that.
Yeah.
I could also go buy, long-term tax-free muni bonds and go buy a 30-year term. Right. So this really kind of gets back to the philosophy, right? And really, what are we doing? We're solving the banking function in your life. And it does exist, whether you pay cash, whether you formally finance with 0% interest. It's the banking function. And at the end of the day, it's life insurance, which brings me to another conversation. James, I'm fully insured. The individual cannot buy more life insurance. Okay? And there's very few of you listening that can say that, me included. And it's substantial individuals, substantial businesses and investments and cash flows and arrangements. And
I have to say, I'm pretty excited. My application was recently approved. And
on your own life?
At the maximum.
Good for you. It tells me you're not making enough money.
That's exactly right.
Well, he's like, now what? He said, I don't have any outstanding loans. Paid paid up to the MEC limit on all of the premiums. Actually, all right. It's like, now what? Now what? Well, look at what all you're financing.
Yeah.
So you want to trade options? You want to trade, coconut farmland in South America, whatever it is that you're going to do anyway. Right.
He needs to finance the start of a non-operating private foundation.
He will.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's very benevolent anyway. Why do you assume it's a he?
Well, am I right?
Yeah. That reminds me of September. So here, toward the end of 2021, right? We're coming up on the fourth quarter, the end of the third quarter. So the 7702 changes all have to be implemented by January 1 of 2022, right? So right under the radar, like your last application was approved.
Yeah.
You want to talk about I don't want to talk about that personal. You share all the personal details you want. I don't want to.
It's as much
I don't want to trigger you.
as I was allowed to get given verifiable income. Right. So
all that stuff you're doing under the table doesn't count.
you got to have, my thing is you have to have tax documentation, and there's a delay in tax. I mean, you file the following year, you don't get the thing back. And so given where I am.
Yeah, listen, nobody can be overinsured, right? That doesn't exist. You cannot legally be overinsured, right? So the life insurance, the total amount you can have in force is based on your age and your income. And then there's a factor. The younger you are, the higher the factor. If you're 20, if you're 30, you can have like 30 times your income, right? Now, the bigger the numbers get, as your income goes up, and maybe you have a business and your gross income is 5 million and your net income is $1 million because your margins are, not that great. Just kidding. Because you're like working harder than most people want to give you credit for.
Yeah.
Right. Then it becomes an art on what number to use, gross or net.
This is never talked about.
This is never talked about.
A substantial people who are economically productive and successful, who want to fully and properly adopt the infinite banking concept, it is a challenge to communicate the economic reality. Put the accounting stuff aside, okay? The accounting stuff is done between you, your accountant, and the government with certain assumptions and with certain objectives. Well, that will say it that far, okay?
You're being very generous in your language. You're being very polite.
That's one thing, right? That's one element of your economic reality. The other element of your economic reality is what's actually happening on the ground. Like what the actual cash flows are, the value you're creating, what the true margins are. Y'all know what I'm talking about. There is and those can be two, they can diverge, believe it or not. What I'm saying. If you want to implement IBC and integrate it so that it can correspond to the facts on the ground, the economic reality, which may or may not diverge from what has been recorded in the accounting books. And look, pay your taxes and all that, but there are certain legal things you can do, y'all know, in order to manage your tax liability. That results in one form of accounts. And then there's...
What are you saying, sir?
And then I'm saying that there's the actual economic facts on the ground. And if you want a premium payment ability, if you want a contractual structure that allows you to pay the kind of premium that the actual facts on the ground would suggest, that you need an agent with a relationship with the appropriate company who can make that argument. Because the company is not going to sit there and just hand these contracts out like candy.
He's making a legitimate and a valid point. Nelson used to say this is like, by the time you solve for your banking need, you're asking for so much death benefit you can't get it past the underwriter. Now, the companies that you write for, the companies that I write for, we love them, we own them, we help educate them. And what is happening on the ground in your business, nobody knows like you do, right? And nobody will ever give you credit. You know this. And so to convey the insurability to someone in an ivory tower, 3,000 miles away or whatever, can be challenging. All right. It can be challenging. And
if the underwriter says, and if the underwriter says no, then you don't get the policy you want. You don't get the premium you wanted to pay.
And all the companies are similar, right? There's not one underwriting standard for one company and a different underwriting standard for another. Yep. Now, there are games that they do table shape, but we're talking about financial suitability, right? And insurability. Beyond the health, beyond the table shaving, is what supports that $10 million death benefit that you're asking for, right? Is it gross income or is it net income? Why,
and if there's a decision with one company and you say, well, they wouldn't give me what I want, so I'm going to go get it from another company, the other company is going to want to know why the other company said no. And you think they're going to go above and beyond to take a risk that somebody else in their industry wasn't willing to?
If the agent can properly convey the reason why the life insurance company can comfortably say yes.
And if they had done that in the first place, there wouldn't have been a no from the first company. Right. So I wonder how much business. I just had this happen the other day and the underwriter was wrong.
What?
And we had a husband and wife. And
were they subject to be corrected?
Yep, willing to. I mean, they asked a question, but it wasn't like they weren't eager to be corrected. They were like they had to check the box. Like, what are you asking for here? And they were evaluating human life. It was a husband and a wife. The underwriter was evaluating human life value based on the wife's relatively low income because she worked part-time and took care of the household. Husband was a breadwinner. We had a lot of insurance. The underwriter missed. I wrote this. We write a cover letter. We explain the case. We preempt all of this so it goes as smoothly as possible. Yeah,
that's old-fashioned, Mr. Griggs.
And this one was deep. This was like 2 pages of thorough explanation of, in the underwriter's terms, why this application should go through. The justification for the amount of death benefit we were asking for on the lesser earning spouse was in terms of the husband's enforced death benefit.
Yeah,
the greater insured. And so the underwriter was looking at it in terms of evaluating based on her income. And I'm saying, no, we need to justify it based on the greater earning spouse's death benefit, which is appropriate. And I know that's all complex. You don't need to master it, but that's what we were doing. And so the underwriter said, based on what she thought was the appropriate way to look at insurability, that no, this wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I get irritated. It's like, so I wrote in the email.
Imagine Mr. Griggs gets irritated.
I wrote in the email. I'm like, as I said in the cover letter, attached below and pasted here. I had to but it was all done. We made it a formality.
Yeah,
it didn't cause a big problem.
No,
they would have lost this client would have lost about a quarter of their ability to pay premium that they were asking for had what this underwriter said.
Had they worked with a lesser agent. I'm just saying, I don't want to beat the agent. I want to encourage the agents, right? If you're a life insurance agent, I want to encourage you.
The stuff we hear from the underwriter.
To do the right thing, because we hear 2 different things all day in and day out. This guy's probably an agent talking about whiteboards, right? Because he can't convey, or he's working with an agent that is dependent upon third-party software. But And I've gotten lots of flack from being too harsh on I ask an innocent question.
Be positive.
It wasn't an innocent question by the words you used. Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't innocent. So let's, I'm full of grace. I would like to receive grace and I like to extend grace. We're all human. Even the underwriters in the home office are human. Oh my gosh, they can make a mistake. But it's not like they have the attitude that it's my way or the highway. They have, most often, if they are not willing to give the agent the opportunity to document and support what the client is asking for, I'm not even interested in talking to the underwriter in that situation.
Yeah.
So I happen to know who you're talking about, and they're all legitimate, in my opinion. God love them. All right. The idea that the life insurance company is a bad entity is wrong. And it's a narrative that has been promoted and pushed on purpose. These people believe in the idea of mutuality and they believe in the nobility of life insurance, or they wouldn't be working where they're at. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you, the consumer, is newly exposed to the infinite banking concept, probably if you're older, you've already jumped over the idea of life insurance and have already predetermined that it's a bad idea based on somebody else's misunderstanding of life insurance. Yeah. Given that, when you get past
convicted in it.
Right, life insurance, get past that. And when you're exposed to the idea of the infinite banking concept and you get past the word life insurance, right? You'll be better off for it. But to get a policy in force, you have to go through all of this. You have to go through underwriting. You have to deal with the underwriters. You have to have a competent agent that can make the case and make it easier, give the underwriters a reason to say yes. And you, the life insurance agent, should know your profession well enough to be able to do that competently. And if that makes you angry, perfect. Move on. You keep listening. I'm talking to the agents, right? I want to be encouraging and admonishing at the same time. All right. So, and nothing but love. The people need you. They need you to step up and do your job.
And yeah, so here's a positive piece of advice. Ask your RVP, ask the underwriter what they need to know on an application. Have you ever done that? And
you mean they do applications? That's old fashioned too. These life insurance companies, like, here the agent makes the case and just says, oh, the underwriting department or the third party underwriters will call you, and they don't even complete an application. They don't submit a cover letter. They don't do anything. Here, just call them and see if it goes through. And then surely, if you call them, the consumer calls them and they decide, you tell me the premium, I'm going to shoot you out an illustration. It's probably going to show a preferred illustration. Wonder why. There are so many games in the life insurance industry, and this is why people don't like life. This is why the life insurance companies have a reputation that they do. They've earned it.
Yeah. And I've encountered the attitude of entitlement, like, well, if I want this, they should just give it to me. You are asking for a policy, a contract, a product from a company. They do not have to give it to you. They can say no. They can say no for whatever reason they want.
That's kind of it's a good point, because you are offering the life insurance company the opportunity to insure you. They are not offering you, quote unquote, life insurance.
You have to ask for it. That transaction has to be initiated by the individual. I understand there's marketing. The marketing is to encourage you to apply to ask for permission for the policy. It has to, the essence of the transaction begins with a consumer who is sending an application. That is the first formal part of the life insurance purchase process. You apply. And in that application includes a certain design, a certain structure of a contract, and based on the amount of premium that you would like the ability to pay, based on the proposed death benefit that would go with or is associated with that ability to pay premium that you're asking for, certain requirements must be fulfilled in that application. A certain case has to be made by fundamentally the agent, right? Should be the agent's role, is to make the case, to justify a particular structure, a particular proposed policy embedded within a certain application. And an agent has to make the case. And when the companies mess up, which they will do, and hopefully it's not your application they screw up, but it could be, it would be nice, I would think, if you go into this with a certain desire to pay premium, and that's what you want, I would imagine it would be a good thing to have an agent who could ensure to the best of his or her ability that you could actually get that, right? And that doesn't always happen. We had a company down the other month or earlier this year talking to one of the underwriters, like a recreational event. He was talking about other agents in another part of the country.
Stop it.
Who they send in applications and they don't even know what the proposed death benefit is. And the underwriters ask, why do you want this? Why does this proposed client want that much death benefit? And the agents tell them, who cares? What's the underwriter supposed to do with that? The underwriter's job is to underwrite. They're to evaluate an application. The underwriter's job is not to advocate on behalf of an applicant. That is the agent's job. And so if an agent abdicates that responsibility and does not a lot of A words, does not advocate for the applicant, the underwriter's just going to say no. That's their job. They're not, what are they going to, they're not going to, they don't know the applicant. The underwriter's not going to fabricate a justification for a proposed policy. Their job is, without the proposed justification, it's like the definition of underwriting. Their job is to say no to a poorly justified application. And they do.
Oh my goodness. Listen, talk about fabrication. And if you have an agent that is willing to fabricate any kind of false information or unclear information, it is not in your benefit at all.
Those agents develop a reputation in the industry.
They do. We have a conversation. That's all we do is we conversate all day, every day.
Every day, all day.
And then the idea of moral hazard, it's almost been forgotten. I guess it came up in the World Trade Center and all that collapsing and the insurance fraud that went on there and the money that was paid. And, but the idea of moral hazard, let's talk about that for a moment. And the agents that are complicit in this, just stop. Just do the industry and your clients a favor and move on. Change industries. Or you can remain and make other hardworking, professional, straight as an arrow agents very profitable because you won't do your job. Okay, I digress. The idea that I have a premium, I'm willing to pay it, so just issue the policy, kind of that attitude. Right. So then the agent is all on board with that. He has a premium. He needs to pay it so I can get paid. Right. And I'm healthy, right? I can pass through underwriting, as far as health. But then all that LexisNexis background check and the financial, underwriting that goes on, have you filed bankruptcy? How long has it been? Has it been adjudicated? Has it been settled? All the other things that they check. And it's like, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this in my background, and I'm going to conveniently leave all that off. Like you're going to get something by the underwriters. Yeah. They check your Facebook page. There's so much public information that exists about you. You should do your own discovery and see what's available out there. Okay.
I've been fortunate. I've had clients be fairly honest. And if something comes up that they didn't, like, it'll be something that they genuinely didn't know about, like cholesterol or something that they weren't aware of at a certain level.
I'm just saying the idea that you're going to get something by,
right,
and the agent is going to help you and encourage that.
I'm going to go lose weight. Look, well, let's send the application in a month. I'm going to go on a fast for a month, and I'll be 20 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
And okay. Why would an underwriter doesn't care about that?
No, because the underwriter's looking at the last, 5 years of medical records, 10 years or whatever, and they seen when you were like you're fat for a reason because you like food, you're not working out or whatever. Maybe it's genetics, whatever it is. But, yeah.
So the point is, an applicant needs a competent agent to make the case, especially the more complicated the case. Like, to truly, genuinely, and maybe this is not the first policy. A lot of people, given how long we've been online, given the age of, say, the Nelson Nash Institute, Becoming Your Own Banker was only published in 2000. A lot of the purchases of dividend paying whole life for the purpose of IBC are first time purchases.
Right.
And, that But Nelson talked about how you will develop a system over time. And so that means more than one policy. And there's a whole way to think about when to properly expand and the right time to expand and why not to do it sooner than you otherwise would need to. There's a whole conversation to be had about that. But the point is, you're going to build out a system over time should you continue to diligently practice the infinite banking concept. And there's a sense in which if you get over the initial hump and get through all the preconceived ideas, once you catch the concept, like Nelson said, IBC is more caught than it is taught. Once you catch it, you kind of can't get it off you. I have a client who started early on with me, who ended up going to, I hope he watches this too. I told him very directly, this irritated me. Oh. He went to one of the big companies because he wanted to sell life insurance.
He wanted to become an agent after he was your client. He didn't reach out to you?
Nope.
Oh.
And then went through, 2 years of the industry, and guess who's coming around now?
Oh, no. Did he go with one of the big four that has a training and recruiting and blah, blah, blah,
got
blah?
tired of that. Wanted to talk about IBC, wanted to talk about banking, wanted to share becoming your own banker, wanted to appear on the Nelson Nash Institute Practitioner Finder, was told no, you will not be, you cannot. While operating under our contract, you will not give that book out. You will not. Yeah, so he eventually got tired of that. No kidding. And so wanted to come back around to doing IBC, and the company's sort of a tangent. This is why we need certain companies that are amenable to this kind of business. If they need to, you don't want to be sneaking things past the underwriter. I mean, the people out there who want to just get something by the underwriter, they're going to sneak it by, and get away with something so you can feel like you've achieved some special victory. Set that aside. That is not the way to get ahead, right? You want to put forth a legitimate application with an obvious, well-stated, out in front proposed death benefit that is justified as suitable according to the appropriate standards by the agent in an underwriter's language, so that when you do go to expand in the future, you can do that again, right? Because if you're going to, this is why I mentioned that a lot of these purchases are these initial first-time purchases. Yeah. Understand that if you are truly implementing what Nelson taught, if you're implementing the IBC, there's going to be other purchases in the future. And so if you're going to sneak something by the underwriter all sneaky like the first time around, and you have an agent who just wants to get paid doing that, you are burning your ability to get applications by in the future. Yep. So you have to be honest. There is every incentive. If you are thinking properly, if you're thinking long-term, willing to think long-range, not afraid to capitalize, willing to pay your dues, willing to rethink your thinking, if you are abiding by what Nelson taught, you need to be honest, because this is going to be an ongoing relationship. And if you don't, because you are so convicted and you're, got one foot in the conventional financial framework, okay, fine. Just understand that your ability to build and accumulate capital and therefore deploy it in the future is going to be relatively limited. Right? You're going to miss out on some of that cash value that you otherwise would have accumulated.
It kind of circles back to a couple of things, to add on to your point, that laying the proper foundation is very important, because if you have the correct foundation, you can build whatever structure on top of that you want, right? And so if you're less than honest, or if you're having to fudge numbers or doing anything less than honest and straightforward, it even gets down to improper structure of a policy, right? If it's not structured properly, it's not a good foundation. And then if you're less than honest, with help or without help, getting that first policy in force, and then you go back to that same company and even other companies, it's kind of a cumulative. If I'm asking for $1 million of death benefit, they only may ask for medical records and an MVR, motor vehicle report. But if I'm asking for $5 million, they want a resting EKG and they want a treadmill report or whatever. If I'm asking for $15 million, they want me to see their cardiologist or whatever. So if my numbers aren't correct on the first application and I'm trying to build on top of that, then I've got to go back and justify what the error was on the first one. Was it human error? Was I just did I just make a human error? And then all this information that goes on out there, kind of we spoke about that a little bit earlier. It's okay to be aware of what's in your medical records. Okay, the little conversations you have with your medical professional and what they put in the record. When you apply for life insurance, a life insurance company is going to want to see those medical records. Or, you're not buying fully underwritten life insurance. Okay.
With a sketch company.
Yeah. I don't know what the hedge funds do besides make profits, but okay. But then like your agent your client that became an agent and got an education in the old school life insurance construct, which is damn near built it is still stuck in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Philosophy. No, you cannot use this book, Becoming Your Own Banker. No, you cannot be a recognized or authorized practitioner. No. What? Well, why is that?
Right.
And we just encompassed the big four. Publicly do not support. They publicly discourage. They publicly state that, no, we do not like this idea that you can become your own banker. Publicly. So when you're going around talking about the big four and listening to these Johans that talk about the big four, just know that the philosophy of the big four does not line up with the idea that you can become your own banker. They're just dang near diametrically opposed.
So what could go wrong?
Why in the world do you want to force me to do business with somebody who has the opposite philosophy of me? It's like, yeah, no, thank you. Anyway, philosophy is very important. So just show them how to do it right. Just be correct. Be right. Be right. Not that not saying perfect, but be an example of what to do. All right.
And the last thing too is it's understandable. I encounter people who are like, "Oh, I'm not super educated," or "I don't know." I want to end with like a word of encouragement. Like, this stuff is all learnable. This is not complex beyond articulation. This is attainable. It's available. The book is not long. We don't need to make things more complicated than they need to be. And I am guilty. I am first in line on that struggle bus of making things more difficult than they need to be.
I agree with that. You're first in line.
I like being first. So I'm right there with you. I got to get over the overthinking and all of that and just learn to open my ears a little wider than, my mouth and listen a little more. I get that. I have to do that myself. But there's a big old reward waiting on the other side of it. And now that I'm a few years into these initial contracts and getting another one, that cash value growth starting to hustle and listen, tax
starting to hustle. You had cash value from day one, young man.
I know, but the growth is starting to be more and more significant.
This is so what happens every time. You look up after a couple of years, you built the policy. You've seen those numbers. And here we are 3 or 4 years later. It's like, what? What? You've seen them.
Yeah.
You built it.
And let me tell you how much of a relief it is. I mean, in my position, 1099, independent contractor, right? Taxes are paid all at once at the end of the year. And that's a big check, right? That's for anybody. I don't care what your income is. It's a big chunk of that income. It's a big number, period, for all people out there. And to know that there's this rising capital base underneath me, that I don't have to, I didn't build a policy on the expectation of turning around and collateralizing every dime of cash value, right? It was built with a proper premium level so that I can leave some of my powder dry, so I can leave some cash value uncollateralized.
For when the opportunities show up.
So in case there's a year where I do better than I thought I was going to, and the tax bill at the end of the year is bigger than I thought it was going to be, that I have enough cash value, I can go take a policy loan to help finance those tax payments. It's such a relief. And to know that the cash value growth in the following year is going to be bigger. So the ability to offset unexpected future costs like surprisingly high taxes will get easier regardless of what happens to the rest of the economy.
And you can't control the interest rates anyway?
It's such a relief.
Did you get stuck on the dividends? Did you get stuck on the dividends as a consumer, watching them being paid?
Oh,
huh? Could you call up the company and have any effect on their dividend scale anyway? Right? Did you look at all the markets around the world and like, oh my gosh, I want to be dependent upon the commodities in India? Right. No, it's like, so wait a minute. When's the last time you started a business that you didn't have to operate, manage, all of the top line, the bottom line, and all that? Well, James, why are you saying that? Oh, I don't know if I'm owning, and I do, dividend paying life insurance issued by mutual companies. I'm an owner of the company. Right. I also have a farm. I also have a business and other business, that requires a lot of time. These things don't happen and operate on their own.
Right.
It's okay that I'm an owner of a company that is that has been profitable for over 120, 130, 140 years. Do they need me to armchair quarterback them to be profitable? I've only been around, 55 years. No, they don't need me. I'm like, what's that worth? Wait a minute. The long-term internal rate of return on a real estate investment portfolio, if you go back to talk to or read some of the writings of the original gurus, I'm not talking about everybody who has a YouTube channel, in their mama's basement. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the men and the women that all of them have graduated now, that generation that invested in real estate, commercial, residential, multifamily, decade after decade, boom, bust cycles. When they say, well, the internal rate of return is about 6%, booms and busts. Okay. Now, if I'm an owner of a company that is going to have a fair internal rate of return, I'm going to have access to capital immediately. And if everything goes wrong, I get to maintain control. I'm graduating first, and all my family and all the things that I love and support are going to be okay without me. Well, that's a blow to the ego right there, right? But what's wrong with that?
Right.
What's wrong with being in an ownership position of companies that are over 100 years old that are profitable? And my whole point here is several. Very natural. It is caught, but you got to vet it for yourself and your own family. And you've got to weed through all of the noise. That's why we talk about the noise here so much. And you, agent, advisor, you can beat me up all day long, brother. Because I know when I'm stomping on a nerve, if I'm talking about integrity and poor structure, you're the first to cry. It's like, what did Babe Ruth say? And I want to be encouraging. There's no question. The loudest boos come from the cheapest seats. Okay. So I appreciate the listeners that are agents and advisors that are seeking the truth and doing the right thing. I commend you. Keep going. Be the example. Don't get lost in the noise. Don't let it get on you. Shake it off of you. Okay. It is worth it, like you said. And whenever we all start this idea, I penciled the life insurance annual reports. Oh my gosh, I'd go online and I would do the loans on and I can't even run an Excel spreadsheet. I'd have it done, penciling, doing the long form calculating on the interest and my call, blah, blah, blah. And literally after 4 years, it's like there's no hammer coming. The companies, most of them, paid the dividend that they illustrated. I built the policies. I look up and like, my gosh, there's that much cash value in there. They paid that dividend and I financed this, and that. It's like, it's natural. Okay. I want more. The expansion of the system.
Yeah. And just to know
that's natural.
To know that the capital position every year, and given when I started, the earlier you start building capital, the better. But it's never too late. But 10 years from now, and I kind of have an idea of what the cash value, it's like,
You have an idea in those two
nice.
policies.
yeah.
What you can't see in the mind cannot foresee its own advance. What you can't see is a third, fourth, and fifth policy. Right.
Pretty exciting.
Look, don't jump over the new mics either, man.
Yes. I was redoing equipment in my own little home studio because I'm going to do some little videos myself as well. And so I came across, this is the only mic arm that comes up from below or from the side. Everything else is over the top. And so I like them. We're going to have to figure out this clamp situation. This is already moving, but I like them.
I'm still hamstrung in here, but
Yours is moving too. We're going to have to figure it out.
I just go along to get along. I just show up. Okay, listen. What else?
I had fun. That's an hour and 10.
I did too. Okay, thanks for listening.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.